Okay, so let me ask you something. How do you actually know what's going on inside your own head? I mean, it sounds like the simplest question ever, right? But the answer? Well, the answer is going to take us right to the very heart of what it means to be you.
Just think about it for a second. You get this sudden rush of joy. Boom! You know exactly what it is. It's immediate, it's certain, and hey, it's yours. Nobody else can feel it for you. It feels totally effortless, doesn't it? But the process behind that split-second self-knowledge, that's actually one of the biggest, most debated topics in all of philosophy and psychology.
And yeah, that process has a name. It's called introspection. Now, this isn't about, trying to remember how you felt on your birthday last year. The key thing here, the really crucial distinction, is that introspection is all about what you're thinking or feeling right now, or maybe just a few moments ago. It's basically our access key to our own internal world. And you better believe it has some very specific rules.
All right, so if we're going to really get a handle on introspection, we've got to lay down the ground rules first. Philosophers have basically said, look, for any act of self-reflection to even count, it has to meet these three core conditions.
First up is the mentality condition. This just means you can only introspect about mental stuff. Your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs. You can't introspect about the weather outside. Simple enough. Second, we've got the first-person condition. This is a strictly solo mission. I can look inside and figure out I'm hungry, but there's no way I can introspect to find out if you're hungry. And number three, the temporal proximity condition. This one's a biggie. It has to be about what's happening in your mind right now or super recently. Not last week, not yesterday.
So there you have it. 3 simple rules. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Case closed? Well, not so fast, because this is where things get really interesting. It turns out that for a lot of deep thinkers, just ticking those 3 boxes, it's nowhere near enough to be considered the real deal.
And that, my friends, brings us to the great philosophical debate. We're officially moving past that basic definition and into a whole other league. We're talking about a much higher standard, something that's often called introspection proper. This is where that simple act of looking inward gets put under a very, very serious microscope.
So you can almost think of it like this. The whole idea splits into 2 levels. On one hand, you've got that basic everyday introspection we just talked about, but on the other hand, you have introspection proper. And this is like the VIP section, a much more exclusive club with a much tougher door policy. So what are these extra requirements to get in?
Okay, here are the big 3 for the proper version. First, there's the directness condition. Your knowledge has to be immediate, like a flash. It can't be a conclusion you reasoned your way to. Second is the detection condition. This means you have to be finding a feeling that's already there, not accidentally creating the feeling just by looking for it. That's a tricky one. And third, the effort condition. This isn't just passive awareness. It requires a special, focused kind of mental effort. Okay, so we've got the rules, we've got the big debates, but this all leads to the next huge question, right? How does our brain actually do any of this? Like, what's the mechanism behind it all? And this is where we get into 3 totally competing models, each with a radically different take on how it all works. So, we've got 3 main theories on the table. First is the inner sense theory. This one suggests we have something like a mental scanner that's just constantly monitoring our own thoughts. Then there's the acquaintance model, which says, nah, it's way simpler than that, we just know directly. But the third one, the transparency model, now that one is a real curveball. Now the inner sense view is probably the one that feels the most intuitive to most of us, right? It totally matches how we talk about it. We say things like, I need to look inside myself to figure out how I feel. It basically frames introspection as a kind of internal perception, like having an inner eye. But then, the transparency view comes along and just flips that entire idea on its head. It argues that to know what you think about something, you don't look inward at some abstract thought. No, you look outward at the world itself. So if someone asks you, do you believe it's going to rain? You don't scan your brain for a belief file. You just look out the window at the clouds. The idea is you learn about your own mind by looking through it, as if it were a perfectly clear window onto the world. And whatever model you lean towards, they're all typically aimed at 2 main targets in our minds. First, there are our attitudes. Stuff like our beliefs, our desires, our hopes. And second, our conscious experiences. That raw feeling of seeing the color red, or that sudden pang of sadness. But here's the thing. No matter what we're looking at or which theory we use, they all run headfirst into one final, massive challenge.
Because after all these rules and all these theories, we finally arrive at the last hurdle,
And honestly, it might be the biggest one of all. It's this fundamental issue that kind of casts a shadow over everything we think we know about ourselves. It's called the calibration problem.
And really, this is the ultimate question, isn't it? This whole process is supposed to be our most direct line to the truth, the very bedrock of self-knowledge. But how can you ever be 100% sure that what you find when you look inside is actually accurate? How do we calibrate these internal instruments of ours?
So here's the heart of the problem. If I tell you, hey, I'm feeling a little bit anxious right now, there's no objective test you can run to prove me right or wrong. There's no machine to plug me into. You just have to take my word for it. My private internal world is fundamentally unverifiable to anyone on the outside.
I mean, think about something as simple as tasting chocolate. That experience can only be known through introspection. There's no machine that can measure chocolatiness. So we're basically stuck in this loop where the only tool we have to check our findings is the exact same tool we're trying to test in the first place.
And so, this is where we're left. Introspection feels like the most solid, secure knowledge we could possibly have. It's literally the voice in our own head. But if that very tool can't be independently verified, if there's even a chance it could be misreporting the facts, what does that say about how well we can ever truly know ourselves?